No one passed the predator test, except the human who used an Earth jungle trick. The Helios Node station hung in orbit around a crimson gas giant. Its sleek hull gleamed, housing the galaxy's most advanced bioneural simulation. Lights pulsed along its frame, casting faint glows across the planet's swirling clouds. Marcus Vale stepped off a shuttle onto the station's dock. A lean 34-year-old human, he carried a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside, a knife, string, blowpipe, mud, and resin nestled together, unassuming tools for an impossible trial. The observation deck buzzed with hundreds of alien species. Tentacles twitched, scales shimmered, and eyes of every shape locked onto the human newcomer. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, a blend of curiosity and sharp-edged mockery. Some chittered in amusement, their voices high and grating. Others hissed doubts, their tones low and skeptical. Marcus scanned the gathering, his calm eyes meeting theirs without a flicker of hesitation. He stood tall, thin but strong, in worn combat clothes that spoke of practicality over flash. Archivist Kirex stepped to a podium, her crustacean-like form clicking softly. Prism eyes caught the station's artificial light, scattering it in faint rainbows. Her voice boomed across the chamber, clear and commanding. The Primeform Trial begins now. 847 species have faced it. Every single one failed. She gestured toward a massive simulation pod at the room's center. Her claws tapped rhythmically, betraying a hint of anticipation. Assessor Pell hovered nearby, his silver skin glinting under the overhead glow. He fiddled with a holographic display, fingers dancing over controls. Everything's gotta be perfect. The trial's record is spotless. His bureaucratic voice carried a nervous edge, like he was reassuring himself more than anyone else. He shot a glance at Marcus, then back to his screens, brows furrowing. Marcus set his backpack down with a soft thud. He surveyed the crowd again, their skepticism thick enough to taste. A small grin tugged at his lips. Nice place you got here. Kinda smells like red tape, though. His casual tone cut through the tension. A few aliens tilted their heads, puzzled by the quip. Others let out low rumbles, unsure if he was joking or mocking them. A hologram flickered to life above the council's platform. It displayed the Primeform specs in stark detail. The creature loomed 3 meters tall, a bioneural predator of shifting sinew and sensors. Multispectral sensors scanned every wavelength, from infrared to ultraviolet. Its form adapted instantly, always one step stronger than its opponent. The hologram showed claws extending, then retracting, as the beast morphed to match imagined threats. The crowd leaned in, some in awe, others in smug certainty. Marcus unzipped his backpack and laid out his tools. The knife's dull blade caught the light, string coiled in neat loops. The blowpipe looked ancient, almost laughable. Mud and resin sat in small pouches, unremarkable to the untrained eye. Laughter erupted from the crowd. A feathered delegate with a crest like a crown leaned forward, voice dripping with disdain. I'll bet he's done in under 2 minutes, 120 seconds tops. Bets spread like wildfire, odds stacking heavily against the human. Kyrix watched from her podium, her prism eyes fixed on Marcus. He stood unassuming, his posture relaxed but ready. No armor, no glowing tech, just a man in combat clothes. She leaned slightly toward a fellow judge, her voice a low whisper. He's too ordinary, isn't he? Doubt colored her words, but a spark of curiosity flickered. Humans were new to the stellar concord, an unknown quantity in a galaxy of calculated risks. The simulation chamber hummed, its projectors springing to life. A humid, multi-layered virtual jungle materialized within the pod. A glowing canopy filtered simulated sunlight, casting dappled patterns on the floor. Vines hung like curtains, swaying gently. The air carried scents of earth and decay, punctuated by distant animal calls. The crowd's murmurs quieted, their attention shifting to the chamber's transparent walls. Marcus straightened, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. The crowd's chatter swelled again, a mix of jeers and speculation. Kyrex raised a claw, her voice cutting through the noise. "The trial starts now. Enter the chamber." Pell nodded, his silver face taut with tension. Marcus walked forward, his steps steady and unhurried. The chamber's door sealed behind him with a soft hiss, locking him in with the jungle. Inside, the air pressed thick and heavy against his skin. Humidity clung to him, familiar as an old friend. He breathed deep, letting the jungle's rhythm settle into his bones. It reminded him of the Amazon, where he'd spent years outwitting predators. He knelt by a gnarled tree, dipping fingers into his pouch of mud, mixed it with resin, smeared it over his arms, face and clothes. The blend masked his heat and scent, a trick honed in the wild. His movement stayed slow, deliberate, each smear precise. In the distance, the Primeform stirred, a shifting mass of sinew and sensors. It blended with the jungle's shadows. Its hunt began, sensors whirring as they swept the terrain. Marcus slowed his heart rate, another Amazon lesson. Breathe steady, pulse faint. He moved like a shadow, slipping between trees, barely disturbing the undergrowth. On the observation deck, Pell stared at his monitors, eyes wide. His vitals, they're fading. That's not possible. His voice cracked, fingers hovering over controls. Kyrix leaned closer, her prism eyes narrowing. The Primeform's scans showed nothing but static, its target a ghost. She muttered under her breath, almost to herself. 3 minutes in, and it's already lost him? Marcus slipped deeper into the foliage, his mind sharp. He remembered a night in the Amazon, outwitting a jaguar by becoming part of the jungle. That memory steadied him now. This was no different, just a bigger stage. The Primeform's sensors probed again, sweeping wide, but his camouflage held. It paused, its form rippling with uncertainty, unable to lock onto a clear target. Marcus glided through the virtual jungle, his steps silent on the damp earth. The air hung thick with the scent of wet leaves and distant decay, mimicking the Amazon's untamed sprawl. Vines draped around him, their shadows dancing under the canopy's filtered glow. He crouched low, his senses sharp, attuned to every rustle and chirp. The simulation felt alive, its sounds and smells pulling him back to nights spent outwitting predators. He dipped his fingers into the mud pouch again, blending it with resin. The mixture coated his skin, masking his heat and scent completely. His movements stayed precise, each smear a calculated act from years in the wild. The Primeform prowled in the distance, a shifting mass of sinew and sensors. Its form rippled, adapting to the jungle's terrain, claws extending, then retracting as it scanned. Multispectral sensors swept the area, probing for any trace of its prey. Marcus slowed his breathing further, his heart rate dropping to a faint pulse. A survivalist trick honed under the Amazon's relentless pressure. He slipped between trees, his body a blur against the foliage, leaving no trail for the beast to follow. On the observation deck, Pell's silver hands darted over his console. His screens flickered, showing erratic data. The humans' vitals they're gone. That's not possible. His voice cracked, a mix of panic and disbelief. He tapped controls, recalibrating sensors, but the Primeform scans returned only static. Kyrix stood beside him, her prism eyes fixed on the chamber. The Primeform's confusion played out in real time, its movements halting, uncertain. She tilted her head, claws clicking softly. 3 minutes, and it's already lost track. How? Marcus paused behind a gnarled tree, his mind racing. He remembered a night in the Amazon, rain pounding the canopy, a jaguar stalking him through the dark. He'd outwitted it by blending into the environment, becoming invisible. That memory fueled him now, sharpening his focus. This jungle, virtual or not, followed the same rules. He reached into his backpack, pulling out the string. With deft fingers, He tied it to low branches, creating subtle sways in the undergrowth. The movements mimicked a larger creature's passage. Faint but deliberate, the jungle hummed with life, amplifying his work. A distant bird call masked the snap of a twig he broke intentionally. The string tugged gently, leaves rustling like footsteps. To the prime form, it was the hint of a rival predator, unseen but close. Its sensors whirred, sweeping wider, but Marcus stayed a ghost. The beast's form shifted, its shape less aggressive, more cautious. It couldn't pin him down, and that uncertainty gnawed at its programming. Pell's voice rose on the deck, sharp with frustration. The system's fine, but he's vanishing. How's he doing this? He glanced at Kirex, seeking answers, but she only watched, her eyes glinting with fascination. The crowd murmured, their earlier mockery fading into unease. A feathered delegate leaned forward, crest quivering. It's like he's not even there. What's he playing at? Marcus moved deeper into the jungle, his steps light as whispers. He carved shallow marks into a tree trunk with his knife, mimicking claw scratches. Not deep enough to be obvious, just enough to suggest a pack's presence. He smeared a dab of resin on the bark, its pungent scent sharp in the humid air. To the prime form, it was a territorial marker, a challenge from an unknown rival. The beast paused, its sensors locking onto the scent, then faltering as no source appeared. Kirix's claws tapped faster now, her voice low but intense. He's not hiding. He's manipulating it. She leaned closer to the chamber's transparent walls, watching the prime form's form ripple. It moved more slowly, its confidence eroding. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. A tentacled alien muttered to its neighbor, "This human's weaving a trap with nothing but air." Marcus climbed a low vine, testing its strength. He stayed in the shadows, his mud-caked skin blending with the bark. The prime form circled below, its sensors sweeping in frantic arcs. He pulled the blowpipe from his pack, loading a small dart, not to strike, but to send a sharp, eerie sound through the jungle. He blew softly, the note cutting through the air, mimicking a predator's call. The sound echoed, bouncing off trees, disorienting the beast further. The prime form froze, its form contracting slightly. Defensive, not predatory. Marcus watched from above, his pulse steady. The jungle's oppressive humidity pressed against him, but it only sharpened his focus. He tied another string, letting it drag through the underbrush, creating a faint trail. The illusion grew stronger, a pack circling, unseen but ever present. Pell's screens flashed red now, warnings piling up. It's detecting multiple signals. It's hesitating. His voice trembled, his bureaucratic calm crumbling. Kyrix said nothing, her eyes locked on Marcus's faint outline in the canopy. The crowd's chatter softened, replaced by a tense silence. They sensed something shifting, something impossible. Marcus adjusted his grip on the blowpipe, his mind racing with the next step. The prime form was reacting, not hunting. Its programming, built to dominate, couldn't handle being outmaneuvered. He flashed a brief grin, hidden in the shadows. The jungle was his domain, virtual or not. He turned this perfect hunter into something else entirely. Marcus perched in the virtual jungle's undergrowth, his body pressed against a mossy trunk. The air buzzed with the hum of insects, their calls weaving into the canopy's rustling leaves. He carved shallow grooves into the bark with his knife, mimicking the claw marks of a prowling pack. Each scrape was deliberate, just deep enough to catch the prime form's sensors. He smeared resin along the cuts, its sharp, territorial scent drifting through the humid air. The jungle amplified the illusion, its natural chaos masking his work as something larger, something threatening. The prime form lurked 100 meters off, its form shifting uneasily. Its sensors whirred, catching the resin's pungent trace, then faltering as no clear target emerged. The beast's shape rippled, claws retracting, its predatory stance softening into caution. Marcus watched from his perch, his breath slow and steady. He knew predators. He'd faced them in the Amazon, where hesitation meant death. This beast, for all its tech, wasn't so different. He slipped to another tree, silent as a shadow. His blowpipe pressed to his lips. He sent a sharp, eerie note slicing through the jungle. The sound bounced off vines, mimicking a rival's call. The Primeform froze, its sensors spinning in frantic arcs. Marcus grinned faintly, hidden in the foliage. The beast was reacting, not hunting. Its programming, built for dominance, was starting to crack under confusion. On the observation deck, Pell's silver hands shook over his console. It's picking up conflicting signals. Claw marks, scents, sounds. It's everywhere. His voice pitched high, almost pleading. He tapped screens, recalibrating, but the data only grew messier. Kirak stood rigid, her prism eyes glinting as she watched the Primeform circle aimlessly. "He's not just evading," she murmured, claws clicking softly. "He's turning its own senses against it." Marcus moved again, leaving a snapped twig in his wake. A faint footprint pressed into the mud, barely visible but enough to tease. He dragged his string through the underbrush, creating a rustling trail that suggested multiple creatures closing in. The jungle's natural din, bird calls and dripping water blended with his tricks, crafting a tapestry of threat. The Primeform's movements grew jerky, its form contracting into a defensive crouch. Its sensors are overloaded, chasing ghosts it couldn't pin down. A feathered delegate on the deck leaned forward, crest quivering. "He's weaving a trap with nothing but air and shadows," she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. The crowd's earlier jeers had faded, replaced by tense murmurs. Some shifted uncomfortably, their scales and tentacles betraying unease. A human with no tech was unraveling their perfect system. Marcus paused in the canopy, his mud-caked skin blending with the bark. He watched the Primeform below, its shape-shifting slowing as it struggled to process the chaos. He'd seen this before, predators rattled by the unknown, their instincts betraying them. In the Amazon, he'd once spooked a caiman with a series of well-placed noises, driving it off without a fight. This was the same game, just a bigger board. He blew another haunting note through the blowpipe, sharper this time, like a predator closing in. The sound echoed, layering over the jungle's pulse. The Primeform's sensors locked onto it, then spun away, chasing nothing. Its form flickered, less fluid now, as if its programming couldn't decide what to hunt. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with psychological angles. Keep it guessing. Keep it scared. Pell's voice broke the deck silence, trembling with panic. "It's circling like it's scared. The Primeform can't be scared." He turned to Kirak, desperate for reassurance. But she only stared at the chamber, her claws still. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of confusion and fascination. A tentacled scholar muttered, "This isn't strength, it's cunning." His words hung heavy, unanswered. Marcus climbed higher, his movements invisible against the canopy's dappled light. The jungle's humidity pressed against him, but it only sharpened his focus. He smeared another dab of resin on a vine, its scent drifting downward. The Primeform reacted instantly, its sensors zeroing in, then faltering again. It backed away, its form tightening into a defensive coil. Marcus's lips twitched. The perfect hunter was starting to feel hunted. He tied another string, letting it drag through leaves, creating a faint rustle. The illusion grew stronger, a pack circling, relentless. The Primeform's sensors whirred louder, their pitch rising with its stress. Marcus crouched low, his knife ready, watching the beast's every twitch. The jungle's rhythm matched his own, its chaos his ally. He was rewriting the rules, turning the hunter's own instincts into a trap. Marcus lingered in the canopy, his breath even, eyes locked on the Primeform below. The jungle's haze wrapped around him, turning his mud-smeared form into a ghostly outline. He waited for the perfect moment, then flashed into view, a brief silhouette against the dappled light. The beast's sensors snapped toward him, locking on with a whir. But Marcus vanished just as quickly, slipping behind vines, his movements a blur honed from Amazon nights. The Primeform's form tensed, its sinew rippling in frustration. Sensors recalibrated frantically, chasing the fleeting signal. It prowled forward, claws digging into the earth, but found only empty air. Marcus circled silently, dragging his string through the underbrush. The faint rustle mimicked a pack tightening its noose, leaves whispering threats. He smeared another dab of resin, its scent sharp and invasive, like a rival marking territory. Kyrex leaned forward on the observation deck, her prism eyes wide. "He's not fighting," she murmured, her voice low with realization. "He's rewriting the game." Her claws gripped the podium, clicking softly. Pell paced beside her, his silver skin flushed. "The system's logging errors. This wasn't in the parameters. It's not possible." His words tumbled out, laced with panic. The crowd's murmurs grew, a low hum of disbelief as the perfect hunter retreated step by step. Marcus pressed his advantage, his blowpipe at his lips again. He sent another haunting sound ripping through the jungle, a deep, guttural call that echoed like a predator's challenge. The note bounced off trees, layering over the natural din, pushing the Primeform's stress higher. The beast's movements turned erratic, its shape shifting, sluggish. It contracted into a defensive form, sensors folding inward, as if shielding itself from an invisible assault. The observation deck buzzed louder now, aliens shifting in their seats. A reptilian delegate muttered to its neighbor, "Look at it back away. From what?" The crowd's earlier confidence cracked, replaced by a tense fascination. They watched the Primeform, once unstoppable, now flinching at shadows. Marcus climbed higher into the canopy, his grip sure on the vines. He stayed invisible, a specter directing the chaos below. His mind raced, calculating each tease, each noise. He flashed again, a split-second appearance near a tree trunk. The Primeform lunged, sensors blazing, but he was gone, melted back into the haze. It whirled, chasing echoes, its programming overwhelmed. Marcus tied another string, letting it snap a branch with a sharp crack. The sound mimicked a closing trap, relentless and close. The jungle sounds crescendoed around him, birds screeching, leaves rustling, amplifying the disorientation. Pell's console beeped warnings, red lights flashing. "It's in full retreat, from nothing." He turned to Kyrex, eyes wide. "We need to abort. This is breaking the sim." But Kyrex waved him off, her focus unbroken. "No, let it play out." Her voice held a note of intrigue, almost admiration. The crowd leaned in, their murmurs a mix of shock and whispers. A feathered alien shook its head. "He's got it spooked. With string and mud?" Marcus watched from above, his knife gripped loosely. The Primeform's defensive curl deepened, its sensors struggling to filter the noise. He'd seen this in the wild, predators breaking under psychological pressure, their instincts flipping from hunt to flight. The Amazon had taught him that. No beast was unbreakable. He blew a final, piercing note through the blowpipe, the sound curling through the air like a noose. The beast recoiled, its form tightening further. Marcus's eyes sharpened. The weak point was emerging, a glowing sensor cluster amid the shifting sinew. He adjusted his position, muscles coiled, ready for the drop. The jungle's humidity clung to him, but his focus cut through it like a blade. The psychological noose pulled taut, the perfect hunter reduced to prey. The crowd on the deck held its breath, the air thick with tension. Pell muttered under his breath, "This can't be happening." Kyrex stayed silent, her prism eyes reflecting the chamber's glow. Marcus waited, patient, his survival instincts guiding every breath. The game was shifting, the roles reversing. He was no longer the hunted. The Primeform huddled in the virtual jungle's clearing, its defensive curl exposing the main sensor cluster. A faint glow pulsed amid its shifting sinew, the weak point Marcus had waited for. He perched high in the canopy, his knife gripped tight, its blade catching slivers of filtered light. The jungle's oppressive atmosphere thickened the tension. Every rustle and call was a potential threat to the rattled beast. Marcus calculated his drop, muscles coiled like a spring, his breath steady despite the humidity's cling. He leaped from the branch, silent as falling leaves. His body cut through the air, aimed precisely at the glowing cluster. The Primeform sensors whirred, detecting the motion too late. Marcus struck with the knife, the blade sinking into the soft spot with a muffled thud. The beast shuddered, its form locking up in a spasm. Sparks flickered from the wound, the bioneural system shorting out in a cascade of failures. The observation deck fell into stunned silence. Hundreds of alien eyes fixed on the chamber below, their murmurs dying mid-breath. A feathered delegate blinked rapidly, crest flat against its head. The impossible unfolded before them, the perfect predator collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. Kyrix's prism eyes widened, reflecting the chamber's dimming lights. She whispered, barely audible, "It's not tech, not power. He just refuses to play the prey." Marcus landed lightly on the soft earth, his boots sinking into mud. He wiped mud from his face with the back of his hand, his expression calm but edged with triumph. The Primeform lay frozen in its defensive curl, sinew rigid, sensors dark. Defeated for the first time in 847 trials, smoke wisped from the strike point, the air carrying a faint ozone tang. Marcus straightened, slinging his backpack over one shoulder as the simulation began to flicker and fade. A tentacled scholar in the crowd muttered to itself, voice low and puzzled. He turned the hunter into the hunted. How? Its appendages twitched, grasping at empty air. The deck's silence stretched, broken only by Pell's sharp intake of breath. He stared at his console, screens flashing error codes. "It's down, completely offline." His silver skin paled, hands trembling over controls. The jungle dissolved around Marcus, vines pixelating into nothingness. The chamber's walls reappeared, transparent and stark. He stood alone in the center, muddy but unscathed, his combat clothes streaked with resin. The crowd's gaze weighed on him, a mix of awe and disbelief. Kyrix stepped closer to the viewing panel, her claws scraping lightly. Pell stammered beside her. "We've got to review the system. Primeform was perfect." This breaks everything." Marcus felt the familiar thrill surge through him, like after outwitting a predator in the Amazon's depths. The rush of turning tables, of instinct over might. He glanced up at the deck, meeting alien stares with a steady gaze. A small grin tugged at his lips. He called out, his voice casual, cutting through the quiet. "Back where I'm from, we call this a walk in the woods. But the Amazon? Way tougher." The aliens exchanged glances, their assumptions crumbling in real time. A reptilian delegate hissed softly, scales shifting colors. Whispers rippled through the crowd, growing into a low buzz. Kyrix approached the chamber's edge, her voice measured but laced with curiosity. "You've changed the rules here. We'll need to study this." Marcus shrugged, his witty calm unbroken. He wiped his knife clean on his pants, sheathing it with a click. Technicians swarmed the Primeform's remains, probes connecting to its frozen form. Data streamed in, overloaded sensors, circuits fried from psychological strain. A victim of its own flipped instincts. Marcus watched them work, arms crossed. The chamber door hissed open, allowing him to step out. Stunned silence followed him, the crowd parting like water. The Stellar Concord Council chamber hummed to life, delegates convening in hushed tones. Kyrix took her seat, presenting a preliminary report. The human strategy focused on psychology, not force. Her words echoed, emphasizing the shift. Pell, flustered, pounded a fist lightly. "We need retests. This can't stand." Alien voices rose, debating humanity's edge with a blend of awe and unease. Marcus, now cleaned up in a side room, overheard the chatter through a vent. He smirked at their bureaucratic panic, drying his hands. A reptilian delegate mused aloud in the hall. They're weak, sure, but they outthink us all. The council nodded slowly, acknowledging the reversal of predator and prey. Marcus received a formal commendation scroll, but he waved it off with a chuckle. Keep it, not into politics. The Helios Node system logged 1,392 sensor conflicts during the trial, a shattering record. The Conquered began revising protocols, weaving in Marcus's tactics. He prepared to leave the station, backpack light on his shoulder, a symbol of raw ingenuity. Kyrix caught him in the hall, her voice soft. You've shown us something unsettling and vital. Marcus nodded, reflecting on the Amazon's brutal lessons. They'd forged him for this. A young alien scribe jotted notes nearby. Humans, not the strongest, but the cleverest. The Concorde announced new trial elements, adding psychological tests. Marcus boarded his shuttle, quipping over his shoulder. Tell your beast to toughen up its nerves next time. The gas giant loomed outside, vast and indifferent. Yet Marcus felt at home. The stars, just another jungle. The Concorde's realization settled in. Humanity's strength lay in defying the prey role. No tech or power could match the instinct to turn the tables. The simulation chamber's lights dimmed, leaving Marcus alone in its stark center. Mud streaked his combat clothes, but he stood tall, unscathed. His backpack rested lightly on one shoulder, the knife and blowpipe tucked inside. The transparent walls revealed the observation deck, where hundreds of alien eyes stared in stunned silence. Their earlier jeers and bets had evaporated, replaced by a heavy quiet that pressed against the glass. The Primeform lay crumpled behind him, its sensor cluster dark, a monument to its first defeat in 847 trials. Kyrix stood at the deck's edge, her prism eyes catching the faint glow of the chamber's lights. Shock flickered across her crustacean features, her claws still. She whispered to a nearby aide, voice barely audible. He's rewritten everything we know. The words hung in the air, unanswered. Pell beside her fumbled with his console, silver hands shaking. We've got to review the whole system. Primeform was perfect. This shouldn't happen. His voice cracked, a mix of denial and panic. Marcus felt the familiar rush in his chest, the same thrill he'd known in the Amazon. Outwitting a jaguar in the rain-soaked dark, turning its hunt against it. This was no different, just a bigger beast. He glanced up at the deck, meeting the alien stares with a calm nod. A grin tugged at his lips. He called out, voice steady and light. Back home, we call this a walk in the woods. Trust me, the Amazon's a lot meaner. The crowd stirred, glances darting between delegates. Scales shifted, tentacles twitched, and crests flattened in disbelief. Their assumptions about humans, weak, untested, were shattered in the span of minutes. A reptilian delegate hissed softly, its voice carrying across the deck. No tech, no strength, just tricks. The words weren't mocking, but awed, almost fearful. The buzz of whispers grew, a low hum of reevaluation. Kyrix stepped closer to the glass, her claws tapping lightly. She spoke, her tone measured but edged with curiosity. You've changed the rules, human. We'll need to study this closely. Marcus shrugged, wiping a smear of mud from his cheek. Study all you want, it's just survival. His casual tone cut through the tension, drawing a few startled blinks from the crowd. He turned, heading for the chamber's exit, his boots echoing softly. Technicians swarmed the fallen Primeform, their probes clicking as they connected to its frame. Data streamed across their screens, 1,392 sensor conflicts, a record of chaos caused by one man's tactics. The beast's circuits had fried under psychological strain, its programming unable to cope with being hunted. A tentacled scholar muttered nearby, its voice low and puzzled. He flipped its instincts, made it the prey. How? Marcus stepped into the corridor, the chamber door hissing shut behind him. The crowd parted, their eyes following him like a tide. He felt their stares, but kept his pace steady, unhurried. The Helios Node's sterile halls stretched ahead, lights flickering above. He adjusted his backpack, its weight a reminder of what he'd done with just a knife and some string. In the council chamber, delegates convened, their voices a tangle of urgency. Kyrix took her seat at the head, her report concise. The human used psychology, not force. He turned the hunter's instincts against it. Her prism eyes scanned the room, meeting nods and furrowed brows. Pell, still flustered, pounded a fist on his console. We need retests. This can't be the end of it. His bureaucratic panic drew a few murmurs of agreement, but most delegates sat in stunned reflection. A reptilian delegate leaned forward, scales glinting under the lights. They're weak, sure, but they outthink us, it said, voice low and grudging. The words sparked debate, voices rising in a mix of awe and unease. Humanity's edge wasn't in muscle or tech, but in something unsettling, reversing the predator-prey dynamic with nothing but cunning. Marcus, now in a side room, washed the last of the mud from his hands. He overheard the debate through a vent, their voices echoing faintly. A smirk crossed his face, bureaucrats scrambling over a simple jungle trick. He dried his hands, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. The Concord could argue all it wanted. He'd done what he came to do. A formal commendation scroll was thrust at him by a nervous aide. Marcus glanced at it, then waved it off with a chuckle. Keep your paperwork. I don't do medals. The aide blinked, confused, but retreated. The council's screens flashed with data, confirming the trial's chaos, overloaded sensors, a beast broken by its own instincts. They began drafting new protocols inspired by Marcus's approach. Kyrix caught him in the hall, her claws clicking softly. You've shown us something vital and unsettling, she said, her voice softer now. Marcus nodded, his eyes drifting to the gas giant visible through a viewport. Just doing what I know, he said, his tone light but firm. The Amazon had forged him for this, its brutal lessons etched into his bones. Marcus leaned against a sleek wall in the Helios Node's corridor, the gas giant's crimson glow spilling through a nearby viewport. His combat clothes, now free of mud, hung loose on his lean frame. The backpack rested at his feet, its simple contents a quiet testament to his victory. Voices drifted from the council chamber, a tangle of alien tongues debating what he'd done. He smirked, catching fragments of their panic. Bureaucrats always hated surprises. Inside the chamber, Kyrix stood at the podium, her prism eyes scanning the gathered delegates. Her claws clicked rhythmically as she presented her report. The human strategy relied on psychological manipulation, not physical strength. He turned the Primeform's instincts against it. Her voice carried weight, each word measured to cut through the room's tension. Delegates shifted, scales rustling, tentacles curling. A few nodded, but most sat in stunned silence, grappling with the implications. Pell paced behind her, his silver skin flushed with agitation. We need retests, Kyrix. This can't stand as the final result. His voice cracked, his bureaucratic calm shattered. He gestured at a holographic display, its data showing 1,192 sensor conflicts during Marcus's trial, a record of chaos no species had ever caused. The system's perfect. He broke it with, what? Mud and string? His words drew murmurs, some in agreement, others in doubt. A reptilian delegate leaned forward, its scales shifting from green to gray. They're weak physically, but they outthink us, it hissed, voice low and grudging. The room buzzed with debate, voices rising in a mix of awe and unease. A feathered delegate countered, it's not just cunning, it's defiance. They refuse to be prey. The words hung heavy, sparking nods and whispered arguments. Humanity's edge wasn't in tech or muscle, but in flipping the natural order. Marcus overheard the chatter through the chamber's open door, his smirk widening. He adjusted his backpack, its weight familiar, grounding. The Amazon had taught him to turn predators into prey, to use their instincts against them. This was just a bigger jungle, with shinier toys. He pushed off the wall, strolling toward the shuttle bay, but the council's debate followed him, echoing down the sterile halls. Kyrix raised a claw, silencing the room. The human's approach forces us to rethink the trial. Psychological resilience must be tested. Her proposal drew sharp breaths. A tentacled delegate muttered, "Resilience? It's trickery." But others nodded, seeing the logic. The Primeform, built to dominate, had crumbled under mental pressure. The Concord needed to adapt. Pell, still flustered, jabbed at his console. "We can't just rewrite protocols because one human got lucky?" His voice rose, drawing glares. Kyrix's eyes narrowed, her patience thinning. It wasn't luck. It was a strategy. Her tone was sharp, final. The council began drafting revisions, weaving Marcus's tactics into new trial parameters. Psychological tests would join physical ones, a shift no species had prompted in centuries. Marcus reached the shuttle bay, where an aide thrust a commendation scroll at him. Its ornate text gleamed, praising his unprecedented triumph. He glanced at it, then handed it back with a chuckle. "Nah, keep it. I don't do trophies." The aide blinked, its three eyes wide with confusion, then scurried off. Marcus adjusted his backpack, his mind drifting to the Amazon. Nights spent outwitting jaguars, dodging snakes, and reading the jungle's pulse. Those lessons had carried him here, through a game no one expected him to win. A young scribe, its tentacles scribbling furiously, caught his eye. It paused, looking up. "Humans," it wrote, "not the strongest, but the cleverest." Marcus caught the words on his tablet, his lips twitching into a half-smile. The scribe hurried off, its notes destined to spread through the Concord's archives. Rumors of humanity's potential already buzzed in the station's halls, a ripple growing into a wave. Kyrix caught up to him near the shuttle ramp, her claws clicking softly. "You've shown us something vital, unsettling, but vital." Her voice was quieter now, almost personal. Marcus met her gaze, his expression calm but firm. "Just doing what I know. Survival's the same everywhere." He nodded toward the gas giant outside, its vastness filling the viewport. "Big jungle, same rules." The council chamber's debate grew louder, delegates arguing over humanity's place in the Concord. Some called for caution, others for study. The reptilian delegates' words lingered in the air. "They outthink us." Marcus didn't care for their politics. He'd done his part, shown what a human could do with nothing but instinct and a few tricks. The Concord would have to figure out the rest. He stepped toward the shuttle, ready to leave the station behind. The gas giant loomed, its crimson storm swirling. To Marcus, it was just another wilderness, vast but familiar. He'd faced worse. Marcus stood at the shuttle bay's edge, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The Helios Node's sterile lights gleamed off the floor, but the crimson gas giant outside stole his attention. Its swirling storms filled the viewport, vast and untamed, like the Amazon's endless green. He adjusted his combat clothes, now clean but worn, their familiarity grounding him. The stellar Concord's debates echoed faintly from the council chamber, their voices a distant hum of shock and reevaluation. Kyrix approached, her claws clicking softly on the polished floor. Her prism eyes caught the gas giant's glow, scattering it in faint rainbows. "You've shown us something unsettling, Marcus. Vital, but unsettling." Her voice was low, almost confiding, a shift from her earlier formality. He met her gaze, his expression steady. "Just played the hand I was dealt. Survival's no different here than back home." He nodded toward the viewport, a half-smile tugging at his lips. The station's halls buzzed with rumors, alien voices carrying tales of the human who broke the Primeform. A young scribe, its tentacles clutching a tablet, scribbled furiously nearby. Humans, not the strongest, but the cleverest, it wrote, the words glowing on its screen. Marcus caught the phrase, his smile widening slightly. He didn't need their praise, but the truth of it felt right. The scribe hurried off, its notes already spreading through the Concord's data streams. Marcus's mind drifted to the Amazon, its brutal lessons etched into his bones. Nights spent outwitting jaguars, reading the jungle's pulse, turning predators into prey. Those years had forged him for this, a cosmic test he'd passed with nothing but a knife and some string. He shifted his backpack, its weight light but familiar, a symbol of what humans could do with less. In the council chamber, delegates finalized new trial protocols. Kirex's voice carried over the hum, firm and clear. Psychological resilience must be tested. The human proved it. Nods rippled through the room, though some delegates shifted uneasily. A feathered delegate murmured, "They defy the natural order. It's dangerous." But the decision was made. New tests would probe not just strength, but cunning, inspired by Marcus's tactics. Pell lingered at his console, still muttering about retests, his silver skin flushed. The system wasn't built for this. We can't just change everything. His protest faded under Kyrek's sharp glance. The Concord was moving forward, rewriting rules that had stood for centuries. Data from Marcus's trial, 1,292 sensor conflicts, flashed on screens, a stark reminder of his impact. Marcus stepped toward the shuttle ramp, ready to leave. An aide scurried up, offering another commendation, this one etched on a crystalline plaque. He waved it off with a chuckle. "Keep your shiny stuff. I'm good." The aide blinked, confused, then retreated. Marcus's eyes flicked to the gas giant again, its vastness calling to him. It was just another jungle, wild and indifferent, but he felt at home. A reptilian delegate watched from a distance, scales glinting. "They're weak, yet they outthink us," it hissed to a companion, voice tinged with grudging respect. The words carried through the hall, joining the growing whispers about humanity's potential. Marcus didn't turn back. Their politics, their debates, they weren't his fight. He'd shown them what a human could do. Let them figure out the rest. He boarded the shuttle, dropping into a seat by a small viewport. The pilot, a wiry alien with too many eyes, glanced back. "Big win back there. Gonna celebrate?" Marcus leaned back, grinning. "Tell your beast to work on its nerves next time. That's my celebration." The pilot let out a chittering laugh, powering up the engines. The shuttle hummed, pulling away from the station. The gas giant loomed outside, its storms churning in silence. Marcus watched it shrink as the shuttle accelerated, his mind calm. The Concorde's realization was sinking in. Humanity's strength wasn't in muscle or machines, but in defying the role of prey. They'd seen it now, etched into their records, a human with a knife and string, turning the perfect hunter into the hunted. The shuttle's engines thrummed, carrying him toward the stars. He thought of the Amazon again, its lessons raw and unyielding. No tech, no power, just instinct and cunning. That's what had won. The Concorde could study, debate, and rewrite their trials. Marcus didn't care. He'd faced the jungle, real and virtual, and walked away. The stars stretched ahead, vast as any wilderness, and he was ready for whatever came next.